All right. Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Dan Curran. Dan, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Well, it's awesome to be here, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Oh, you are so welcome. I'll tell you what, I really appreciated our conversation that we had before this, and we made such a connection, and I have been looking forward to doing this interview with you. And I want to start by giving a shout out to Jessica and the folks over at the podcast guest platform because that's how you and I met. Was through that, and Jessica had sent me a message and saying, "Hey, Kev, check out Dan's profile on the platform. I think he would be a great person to interview for your podcast." And so when I went to check it out, I also saw that you had helped John Ruhlin with his book, with his second book and stuff. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, Dan is definitely somebody that I want to get to know because I was very close friends with John. John and we met, I think, oh gosh, probably back in '04, '05 at one of Jason Gaynor's Mastermind Talks events. And we became very close friends. And I host a lot of events for entrepreneurs and stuff. And John would always ship me copies of his giftology book to give to all the entrepreneurs at the events and stuff that I would host and stuff. And we did some other stuff. He helped me really honor some entrepreneurs that have just been so pivotal in my own life. And just he was just amazing at gifting for just unique gifts to just really further relationships. And he's definitely been missed, and but his impact and his legacy is continuing on, and it is so awesome to see. And so, with that, I want to
Yeah.
turn it over to you and give you the opportunity to share because I want to give the listeners the opportunity to really get an idea of what you're all about. You can share, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you do, Dan, and the impact you get to make in the world. And I would also want you to share some of your backstory because I know you have an amazing story, and I want to be able to share that with our listeners as well. So I'll just kind
Okay.
of include that all together and just give you free range to go where you want to go. So
Yeah, excellent. Well, please interrupt
sure.
if I, continue too long. Well, and I'm also going to weave in a little John Ruhlin in there. How's that?
Perfect.
We'll address both. So, serial entrepreneur, always in marketing and advertising, storytelling. I don't want to anoint myself as a storyteller, but I will tell you, storytelling is very, very fascinating to me. The human condition, documentaries, reading nonfiction books, I've always been fascinated with. So I'd had to hats off to my mother, who was also, very instrumental in exposing me to documentaries when people weren't talking about documentaries when I was a kid. And so as I went into adult life, I started a marketing company around 2000. And from there, I got to work with some of the largest brands in the world. And I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. So you have to go where the bank is. And at that time, that was Anheuser-Busch. So they helped put my kids through school. And as I progressed on, my entrepreneurs, like myself, are very ants, have ants in our pants. So I started doing some M&A, and I've really joined that, what you would call tuck-in acquisition. So we would grow the marketing agency to be bigger, and then I had a few exits. In recent history, again, ants in the pants, got into technology, and that was really challenging. So, and I'll hit pause here and say, my life has been changed by people are familiar with YPO or EO groups, and that's where I met John, is in my EO
Okay.
group. And as you go through that, and people know. It's a lot of sharing, very confidential, intimate sharing about your business, life, faith, work, everything that stays in that room of those people you're in. So you get to learn that we're all really misfit toys.
We are.
And
Yeah.
it's not you're rich, poor, rich, poor, rich, poor, basically. And if some people are poor all the time, probably not going to be an EO. If you're rich all the time, you're probably not going to be an EO. So we're these non-linear types. And that's where I met John. So John was a very active member in my forum, my small group, but I just knew him in that context. So I knew a little bit about his family. I knew a little bit about his work, his social life, et cetera. And we had a deep relationship. And I saw him come into being as he evolved as I did over 10 years as an entrepreneur. And so as I evolved, I had to deal with mistakes, because you have an ego. And so I had businesses that didn't go quite well. I was kind of a golden child in businesses that did go well. And then I had one that didn't. And it sounds trite, but I mention this kind of underlining it in that made me who I am. That made me a mentor to others. That made mentored me more, listening, better listening to people that came into my life to understand we're all misfits. It's not, what I said before, it's not all sunshine and lollipops. And as I went through this, career as an entrepreneur, and now I'll kind of get us to present time. In late 2023, uh, older in life, I got to do something I really wanted to do, and that's get into nonfiction book writing and publishing. And so I have this company called Chapters, and I knew that I wanted to make it easier for people to share their story, their wisdom, their genius, their life experiences. I knew that the publishing industry was very artesian, very cloistered, very smart people, but the smartest people I know have never written a book. And so that was my mantra. It's like, how do we open it up? How do we become more blue ocean? Really create, like, let publishing do what they do, that 1% that figure out, but let's open it up to another 5 or 10% that are just fascinating people that have no idea who Wiley or any of the big publishing companies are. So I'll hit pause here in a second by saying when I started, there's one person, and I knew that speakers, thought leaders, big time content creators ran in circles with other speakers and thought
Yep.
leaders, et
Yep.
cetera. And who did I call? I called John Ruhlin. And I
There
said,
you
John,
go.
I've got this idea. It includes AI. It's true. We all have companies that are unique and going to destroy industries and create new industries, and that's what I thought Chapters could do. But I had to get some sales. I had to convince some people that would like to write a book. And man, that guy, and for those who don't know who John Ruhlin is, he wrote a fabulous book and was a great speaker, and he passed away at too young of an age about a year ago. But for about 6 months, he was on with me and with our company, and he introduced us and is responsible for our launch. So that's what I do now. And he left a blueprint on how to connect with people, and I still use that blueprint. And he is just instrumental in our company. So Chapters started January 1st officially. We're in R&D for summer 2023. And we are help people write their book through voice to manuscript. So we talk to people like in this setting, and we've created an AI platform that is actually more authentic than a ghostwriter. It's your voice, your tone, but we go through this quick process, and you have a book in a matter of weeks. And we have human editors that are eyeballing the content constantly. And then once you have that book done and published, we have what's called a living library or knowledge bank. That book can turn into blogs, movie scripts. So it's really an exciting time to be to fulfill my dream
Yeah.
of really helping people write nonfiction books.
Wow. So, and you don't necessarily have to share anybody's, who it was, but I'm just curious, what is a result. I mean, obviously, so the result would be helping somebody get their book published. But beyond that, beyond just publishing the book, what is an experience that you've had with one of your book authors that you are just like so incredibly proud of, and maybe even some surprising things happens along the way in that whole process of getting their book out?
Well, great question. I'm fortunate to have many, many responses to that. So I'll pick a couple. And I'm going to preface it by saying these are really touching, interesting examples I'm about to give you. But to anyone that's saying, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business owner, I'm a stay-at-home mom, or I'm whatever, am I worthy of having a book? And I'm saying, yes, you need to tell your story, whether with me or someone else, that it's so like my dad passed away. I don't many years ago. I don't know how I felt about politics, barely religion,
Yeah.
relationships, all this stuff. What was his life like and work and so forth. So I'm a big, big advocate, tell your story. But to answer your question, I'll give you two. I'll give you a quick one and then I'll go a bit longer. So we have a fair amount of doctors, scientists, healthcare professionals that write with us. And we have a wonderful story and it's about to be published. So I'm going to change a few things here,
Okay.
but it's a leading doctor and she is a cancer doctor and quite noted. And she has been helping women with breast cancer for quite some time, an oncologist. And lo and behold, she got cancer. Lo and behold, she got breast cancer
Wow.
and double mastectomy. And now the scientist, the doctor is the patient. And to hear her tell the story is in when she really hasn't told anyone the story. I get to be the front lines,
Wow.
before it goes out, is fascinating that this incredibly smart person who has worked her life to help people truly selfless,
Yeah.
all of a sudden is faced and put, has to wear the shoes of um, her patients has been just really, really touching. So I'll announce when the book comes out, everyone can buy it, and then there's a
I'm
lot
just
of
I'm just sitting here right now
yeah,
with I just got goosebumps from it because I'm like, wow, certainly an unfortunate set of circumstances,
yeah,
but at the same time, I can only imagine whatever she's been doing all these years
yeah,
and serving the patients that she serves, it's now going to become so much more powerful because those patients are going to know, like, man, she is going to totally understand right where I'm coming from because she is me.
right, yeah, and
Man, that's
she's
so powerful right there.
yeah, it's been quite special, and again, going back to other people that aren't doctors and they're just like you and me out there. She had no intention of being a speaker, of being an author, of all, any of this. She's no more wanting to open up about her personal life than most of us. But thank goodness she is, and we're all going to be blessed for it. And I'm sure she would say everyone else should do the same thing. So here's the second and final story I'll talk about. There's another, someone who's really affected my life. I don't know if you know this gentleman named John O'Leary. He's a very popular speaker. He's actually a burn victim from when he was a child. And John is a top 10 speaker and an author and has a movie coming out in hitting nationwide release in October with William H. Macy playing, people are baseball fans, Jack Buck from the Cardinals. And Jack Buck, who did not know John when he was burned as a young kid, Jack Buck introduced himself to John, found his way because he read it in a newspaper. And the story will give you goosebumps when you go to the theater or watch it on Netflix in the coming months. But John lives in my neighborhood, and he reached out and told me that I need to meet a gentleman named Todd. Again, this book's about to be launched. And I think Todd told me he's one of four quad amputees, Marine who stepped on a landmine uh, in Iraq. And Todd's story, he functions really well. He's really got the best. healthcare and so forth. So he's very mobile and gets around quite well. I met him for coffee, and he drives a big old truck. But he had four of his limbs, sadly destroyed in wartime. And thank goodness that my friend John got to know Todd and said, "You need to write a book." And Todd was like, "How am I going to write a book? If I typed it out, even with the tools, technology I have right now, I'm not a writer." And he goes, "Yeah, you have a story, and it's more than just the him being a Marine and this terrible accident happened." The book is jaw-droppingly good. I don't want to say he's Thoreau or Hemingway, but this country guy, I think he would say that, is poetic many, many times. And and this is, I guess I'll show off about what we do. We interview people, and sometimes they come to us with an outline of a book or something, but we interview them like in this setting. And we've created technology that if you were interviewing me like you are now, and you would be an editor for us, and we would spend a month or two in interviews, and our technology takes all the text files and creates in very quickly a book. And we also take any blogs or podcasts or TV, TEDx talks, and put it in there to create a book. For Todd, he was able to sit down and have about 10 to 12 conversations just like this for an hour and a half. And if we sat here, I think we'd get about 10,000 words. So if you can imagine 10, 12 meetings, that's 120,000 words. An average book's 50 or 60,000 words. We have plenty of content. So there's no need for AI to create any content. What our AI does is organize it and help the editor.
Okay.
And Todd reluctantly, being an author, to be very to share this and be very forthcoming with probably things he's never told other people, was really courageous. He enjoyed it. And that is my second example of something that we're really proud of,
Yeah.
being able to help him and just let him talk and be transparent and authentic and vulnerable. So
Yeah.
there's a couple, and then we have others that are in all different types of industry, but there's a couple of examples.
That is so awesome, Dan. And it's really easy to see from hearing those two stories why you are just so passionate about the work that you guys are doing at chapters and stuff, and that's what it's all about, man. I mean, I love doing what I do too. I love serving the entrepreneurs I get to serve too. And it's like, when we're that passionate about what we do, and we get to attract some pretty amazing entrepreneurs into our life.
Yeah,
It's so okay,
absolutely.
so now that we've got some context set here, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. And I'm going to reiterate the question around relationships for the benefit of our listeners. So, Dan, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, and as we chatted before, and maybe others have gone this route, I'm going to, there's two, and I'm going to
Okay.
start with Jason.
All right.
And I'll share his last name in a second. But Jason is not someone then that I broke bread with, that we were really friends, that we really saw eye to eye, that we were people who in normal life would have hung out as best friends. He wasn't evil or a bad person, but we're very, very different people.
Okay.
Sometimes some friction. And we were business partners. I haven't had many, but he was one. But he taught me in ways that I still think about sometimes daily or weekly or monthly. He was not a warm person at times, and he, did have a wonderful family and wonderful wife and great people. But he was what you would call all business. When this is pre-COVID, but when you would walk in to the office. But so that was a little context. Here's the content. and I'll get to kind of where he really affected my life and affects me. And that is, I come from a very right brain business, marketing. I like writing, editing, and I built, advertising and communication companies. That's what I've been doing the last 25 years. I don't know if we are really business people at the end of the day. It took me like 20 years. Like, it's not like someone hands a balance sheet or a cash flow analysis and we're like, oh, great, let's go look at that. We have ideas. We're more like plumbers. I just want to be a plumber. I don't want to, what is the account? What's QuickBooks? What's all that stuff, and I had had a couple of companies and had done well before I had met Jason, but a banker introduced us, and Jason went on to buy my company, but I stayed on as a partner of his, and we were building a portfolio of marketing agencies to sell.
Okay.
And he did not physically grab me by the collar, but he really, really emphasized being overly prepared with anytime you're presenting your numbers in your books, that really your business, and this is, I'm sure everyone's heard this 100 times, but your business is equally as told. And I'm in the communication business, so this took me like 10 times before I stick in, is really told in your financials. It's just point blank. It's someone really good that kind of knows the entrepreneurial world, but is really wicked smart numbers. They would agree with this 100%. They can just look at your books. They can just look at the quantifiable data,
Yeah.
not the big logos, not the great employees you have, but they can look at that. And he really helped me understand how to really analyze those numbers and to grow. And he was a younger guy. Again, we weren't like particularly close. Um, but I would say there's two things. That's one. That is really, and to understand numbers. So if anyone's listening here and you're like me and you're a crazy right brain guy and you want to tell stories and you want to talk to this doctor who's got this great story and all these people, that's my fun part of my job. I get
Yep.
lots of oxygen from that. I got no oxygen from the financial aspects of it. But there's oxygen there, and it really can tell you more than meets the eye.
Yeah.
More than just cut here or add here. It can tell you how to scale your company, um, where your strong points are, where you're like, you can have a great P&L, but a horrible balance sheet. You can have a great balance sheet and a horrible P&L. I was always great actually on the P&L. My balance sheets seemed to, without getting a lot of details, seemed to suffer. So that was one. Number two is more of a soft skill. And because we were doing M&A, we would go into some pretty big rooms. And now our company we had scale, and it's all relative, right? Especially in these trillion-dollar companies that exist now. But we had scale. We together maybe $50 million. And it was me and him and a couple other people that had equity. But it was, to me, that's big, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were going out trying to either be the minnow swallowing the whale or sell or merge. So we just had lots of investment bank meetings, private equity meetings, VC meetings. And God bless all these suits, but again, I'm creative. I get to hang out with people always younger than me. So I get to live this kind of just more pop culture kind of life. But I could be in that room, thought I was pretty good in that room. Well, I really wasn't good in that room. Those people were not interested in the logos. They were to some degree. Logos meaning the brands I was working with.
Mm-hmm.
They really weren't interested in our people. Again, this doesn't make these VCs, private equity, investment bankers bad, but I spent a lot of time with Jason, and Jason was exceptionally well put together in those meetings, and he was congenial, and the conversations flowed. It wasn't like he wasn't a nice guy or anything like that, but he was contextually relevant to what they wanted. And some of these people flew in from Europe or New York or whatever. And sometimes I would go off on a tangent on some creative thing or an award or some stupid thing that really was, if you look at it, it's almost inconsiderate to these people. And that's probably too harsh of a term, but they're bankers. So talk to them like a banker, And it's not the career maybe, Kevin and Dan Curran would take, but that's their career. And, we need to respect that. So he really helped me that. And to this day, I'm really, really prepared if I'm doing, looking for funding or capital or doing a merger acquisition. I really, really try to take that extra 10 minutes, that extra hour, that extra 10 hours, that extra week, whatever it takes to be really, really prepared. And again, the backdrop is I'm a right brain creative type. So you can learn these things later in life.
Yeah.
The third thing I'll mention, I said two, but I have three and I'll end after this. This is sad. We sold the company. The relationship ended okay. But we sold the company. I went on to do some other activities. And I didn't mention Jason's very tall, very handsome guy, beautiful family, checked all the boxes. I saw him like about 9 months later, ran into him a couple times, and he didn't look well. And you probably tell where the story is going is that a year after that, which is about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, he passed away. He had a kidney disease of some sort. Again, we were not great bread kind of friends and so forth, but there's lessons there. So I don't want to get, too sad on that, but just lessons on life is precious. And so, yeah, there have been other people affect my life that a client where I've made, sold millions of dollars worth of stuff. Yes, it affected me, but, to answer your question, and there's probably a more eloquent way, it can be on unexpected
Yeah.
sources to change your life. And so some of that was hard to swallow. Some of it was sad, but it was all good, to at the end of the day. And I've tried to pass that along to other people, what I learned from him. So,
From what you
and I'll tell
shared.
you, for this meeting, you also made me think of him because I had other people, right? The big client, the friend, the mom, all these people, but it's appropriate for him for sure.
Yeah. And he had a, I had a partner like kind of how you described Jason, where because I'm really this relationship guy. I love just talking with entrepreneurs, getting to know them, having them share their story and all that kind of stuff. And like Jason, my partner for a while that I had is all about let's just get down to business,
Right, right,
And
yeah,
so and so, but I can relate like what you shared about Jason and just being able to go into those meetings with those bankers and just totally jive with them,
yeah,
and speak their language and give them what they needed. Because like you said, you would get off on tangents on this and that, and they're like, I don't care about that. I want to
right.
talk with Jason,
Yeah, and
So,
that's true. And by the way, that's true. And they wouldn't say that, but
yeah,
it.
yeah,
They were
yeah,
saying it, and they did think I want to talk to Jason. I would have too. And now I'll never let that happen. Ever, ever,
yeah,
ever, ever. So yeah, I agree.
yeah. Well, and you said you had one more person that you wanted to honor
Yeah,
too.
then another person, her name is Carla Boyd, and I mentioned earlier EO. And Carla, the story with Carla is that, again, we weren't close friends the first year or two that I was with her. She's incredibly successful in a very niche business. She's winding it down or has wound down a lot of it, but of all things in the sleeping bedding industry. So if you go to a Walmart or Target, inflatable beds, mattresses, and so forth. There's chances, and anyone in that industry would know her, and her husband's also in it, and their reputation is pristine. And I think he started selling water beds. And, we're helping him with his book right now. But he started in water beds, so you can imagine, what that story was like back in the '80s and so forth. But great reputation. And I mentioned this term earlier, but what she taught me is, and again mentioned this term earlier, is that we're all misfit toys. So I don't think I was saying anything. I mean, long gone how this all came about in my mind, exact timing. But I remember my EO group, my forum, or our peers that we would hang out. Sometimes you would make fun of some nutty entrepreneur, some peer of yours that maybe they're successful, but I don't know, they're on their 10th wife or they're whatever, they're just extravagant. Or maybe they're just prickly as hell.
Mhm.
Others, because that's whenever our chapter, I think it's like 125, 150 members. There's prickly people. Not everyone again is like Kevin and Dan, we all have our faults. So there's there's just this spectrum of people. And maybe there's a scolding on hers to our group, like, hey, we're all just trying to get through it. We're all trying to figure it out. There's 1% of people, or 0.1 of 1% that are bad, evil people, but 99.9%, everyone's just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And just that one thing really, and I know it's a simple thing, but it really is not. It did, again, later in life when this was going on, it really changed how I dealt with people. And I think 100%, just like Jason, has allowed me to make a lot more money by people I'm dealing with that I don't really get, we're going to have an Oprah moment here. I really pulled back all my ego when walking in a room. Like, I don't think I always had a lot, but there's some, we're roosters, Kevin and Dan, all of them, we're little roosters when we walk in a room. That rooster's long gone. There's no, it's almost like the John rule. I mean, it's just pay it forward, give it forward. What can I do? If someone's kind of a stiff at a cocktail party or something like that, I don't hate them. I don't badmouth them maybe like I used to. They're nervous, And so she taught me that skill, big time, which I think is absolutely, affected my bottom line. And again, there's other names that, people that gave me, 10 years worth of business and all these things, certainly. And I appreciate those, and I think we all stand on, probably no more than 10, shoulders, basically,
Yeah.
if you really look at kind of life-changing things, it's not that big of a group, it's people that really do a favor. And there have been on the financial, definitely business wise of actual real business. But I think what Jason did and what Carla did and what John did, were really more important to my life. John paying it forward, always just asking people what I can do for you. And Jason to be well prepared, and Carla to be just really patient. Be patient with yourself and to be patient with others, and to laugh about it all, that we're all just trying.
Yeah.
And so that's how I'll put a little bow on that one. That's how I would look at those three people. And it has resulted in millions of dollars.
Yeah. 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 Man, that
Or
is.
for my company, and as it goes down, hopefully there's a check for me at the end of every 2 weeks, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was really awesome, Dan. And what a powerful testament that is right there to just the power of right relationships, because right relationships, they are so valuable to us. They open doors that to opportunity that we wouldn't have had without those
Yeah.
relationships in our lives.
And if
Yeah.
you do a little graph, or and connected dots, in some ways all those people, two of them knew each other, but not everyone knows each other, but they're all a degree separated. So there's three
Yes.
dots. I'll go with Jason, there's a dot. I'll go with Carla, there's a dot. And there's John Ruhlin, there's a dot. Well, there's thousands of dots, right? But I'll throw a fourth dot, and that is Matt Wagner, banker, just amazing, owns Parkside Bank, in a very concierge, kind of private wealth bank in St. Louis. Was in my forum. He connected me to Jason they played golf or club, whatever. So he connected me. Matt also connected me to a private equity guy that was the first guy that invested in one of my companies. And that two of those people knew the other people. John, I think the private equity guy knew John Ruhlin really quick. So I don't have a big lesson for all that, but these dots connect, together. So
Yeah.
as we go through our life, again, I go back to, it's really just, yeah, it's hundreds of people, maybe thousands of people, but it's like 10 or 15 are really, the 10 or 15 dots
Yeah.
are working around you and connecting
Yeah.
and making this stuff happen. So even just telling that story, it's funny how some of these people are 1 degree separated.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come here and share your story and share your experience around relationships, Dan. And for anybody else that's listening to this going, man, Kev, I really love Dan. I love who Dan is. I love how he shows up and stuff. And maybe they're interested in finding out more about the work you guys are doing at Chapters. Any websites, any resources we can share with folks?
Yes, chapters.io,
Okay.
and you can go there. My email is dan@chapters.io. Dan Curran on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I recently started a Substack page and channel, and that is Dan Curran Chapters, I believe, but you can type in Dan Curran and it will show up. We have video demos of chapters on our website.
Okay.
If you have any interest in publishing or writing a book or hesitating writing a book, there's no sales with me because writing a book's a big decision. It's like buying a house. When you're ready, you're ready. All I can do is just be an ambassador that there's new technology out there, new processes that just make it much more fun and enjoyable. And I'm just a big cheerleader for people to tell their story. And in this world of AI, which I am earning my living with right now, I think the world of AI, we will be starving for human stories. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think people should really, if not for themselves, for their kids, for their neighbors, for their business, I think you will absolutely love the process of writing a book.
Yeah. And you mentioned that because typically the book writing process, from my experience of talking with entrepreneurs who've done it, it can take months or maybe even longer than a year to do it. But you mentioned weeks. So with this whole process you guys are using, it's much faster now too than the typical process of writing a book has been in the past.
Correct. One of the reasons why I wrote the book is I wrote a book, and it's actually just going to be published this year. And I wrote it 4 years ago, and it took me I did it during COVID, and it took forever. It took forever and ever and ever to do it. That was just on my own. But a typical ghostwriter, and there's um, people have different opinion, but our research shows if you hired a ghostwriter, a really good one, it could minimum 6 months, and sometimes it does take well over a year.
Yeah.
And I'll also tell you, all the fun is sucked out of it. After, I don't know about you, but after a while, it's not as fun as it is. So we do that not to rush anything in our process, but really 10 to 14 weeks we can get it done, and it's just I don't, it's just a much more enjoyable process. And if you are inclined to physically, if you have the motor skills to write a book, write a book. We're not telling you. Or if you have a ghostwriter you love, use them. We're just an alternative to
Mhm.
that, to the people that are ADHD and no fine motor skills and in a hurry, but have, some wisdom, knowledge, or life experiences they'd like to share.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap, Dan?
Well, I told you before this call, I just got back from, a big meeting of publishers. And it is interesting. I'm going to use a term that you've probably heard 50 times today. I guess we have to live with this term, and that's AI. And I just think everyone needs to take a deep breath, and it'll be what it'll be. We just seem to be this species of animal that just seem, when we don't get in our way too much, we seem to figure it out. And I think I think Warren Buffett says it's like nuclear power. It's 99% of it's good. 1% is really bad. So yes, I do have that caveat. 1%, I guess the robots could take over the world. So I'm not going to be that Pollyanna. But I would say, just with regard to AI, Just explore. Don't, there's a lot of people pontificating, but we're still early. This is caveman period we're still in. So just enjoy life and don't worry about it too much and just study it and try to adopt and
Yep.
some of it in your own life. So
Yep.
I'll leave you with that.
Yep. Well, Dan, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. Really appreciate you. And I'm totally stoked to get this out there and share it with a lot of other entrepreneurs. So thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm very grateful.